You're nothing more than a tiny yellow oval stuck to the underside of a leaf. You can't move, you can't think, and you definitely can't defend yourself, but you're alive, and that's what matters. Inside your egg, everything is dark and cramped. Your body is forming piece by piece, legs, head, mandibles, all crammed into a space smaller than a pinhead. You don't know it yet, but your mother picked this leaf carefully. She tested dozens of plants before settling on this one, making sure it had exactly what you'd need when you hatched. She didn't stick around to see if her choice was right. That's not how this works. The leaf sways in the breeze, and you move with it. Sometimes raindrops hit so hard they nearly knock your egg loose. Other times, the sun beats down until the surface gets uncomfortably warm. You have no control over any of it. You just wait and grow, using up every bit of nutrition your mother packed into that tiny shell. Then, after what feels like forever, but is really just a week, something changes. The walls around you start to feel tight. Your body has outgrown its container, and there's only one way out. You push against the shell with everything you have. It's exhausting work for something so small, but eventually, a crack appears, then another. You force your head through the opening, mandibles working to tear the shell apart. Fresh air hits you for the first time, and suddenly the world explodes with color and movement. You're out, but you're not done yet. The first thing you do is eat your own eggshell. It sounds gross, but it's packed with nutrients, and you're going to need every bit of energy you can get. Welcome to life as a ladybug larvae. You look nothing like what you'll become. Instead of the bright red shell and cheerful spots everyone recognizes, you're dark, spiky, and honestly kind of terrifying. If a human saw you right now, they'd probably try to squash you, not knowing they were killing what would eventually become one of their garden's best friends. But that's their loss. You've got work to do. Your first priority is food, and lucky for you, this leaf is crawling with aphids. They're small, soft, and completely defenseless, basically the perfect meal for a newly hatched larva. You spot one nearby, moving slowly as it feeds on plant sap. You don't hesitate. You grab it with your mandibles and bite down hard. The aphid barely struggles before going limp. You tear into it, consuming every bit of soft flesh and fluid. It's your first kill, but it won't be your last. One aphid isn't enough. Your body is growing fast, and that takes fuel. You move across the leaf, hunting down every aphid you can find. Some try to run when they see you coming, but they're not for speed. Others built release alarm pheromones, calling for help that never comes. You don't care about their distress signals. You're hungry, and they're food, so that's the only equation that matters right now. Within hours, you've cleared the leaf of aphids. Your body has already grown noticeably larger, and your appetite has grown with it. You need to find more food, which means leaving the safety of your birth leaf and venturing into the wider world. You crawl to the edge and look down. The drop to the next leaf seems enormous from your perspective, but you don't have a choice. You lower yourself down, legs gripping the plant stem as you make your way to fresh hunting grounds. The second leaf is even better than the first. It's covered with a colony of aphids, so thick they're practically walking on top of each other. You've hit the jackpot. You dive in, mandibles snapping left and right. The aphids panic, trying to escape, but there's nowhere to go. You work methodically, grabbing one after another, biting through their soft bodies and draining them of fluid. It's messy work, but efficient. As you feed, something interesting happens. The aphids start releasing more and more alarm pheromones, and this time, something responds. Ants arrive on the scene, marching up the stem in formation. These aren't just random ants, they're the aphids' bodyguards. The aphids produce a sweet substance called honeydew, and in exchange, the ants protect them from predators. Predators like you. The first ant to reach you is twice your size and armed with powerful mandibles. It doesn't hesitate to attack. You barely dodge its first strike, mandibles snapping at the air where your head was a second before. You counterattack, grabbing the ant's leg and biting down hard. It pulls back, but you don't let go. You're stronger than you look, and your mandibles are razor sharp. The ant thrashes, trying you off, but you hold to shake firm until it finally stops moving. More ants are coming. You can see them climbing up the stem, and you know you can't fight them all. Time to retreat. You grab one last aphid for the road and make your escape, crawling quickly toward the edge of the leaf. The ants follow, but you're faster. You drop down to the next level of the plant, leaving them behind to tend to their remaining aphids. You find shelter under a larger leaf and settle in to digest your meal. Your body is working overtime to process all the protein you've consumed, and you can feel yourself getting heavier. Your skin starts to feel tight, like a shirt that's too small. This is normal. It means you're outgrowing your current form. Soon, you'll need to molt, shedding your old skin for a larger one. The molting process is both fascinating and vulnerable. You find a secure spot on a branch, somewhere hidden from predators and protected from the elements. Your body stops moving, and your skin begins to split along predetermined lines. It's not painful, but it's exhausting. You push and squeeze, forcing your way out of the old skin like climbing out of a wetsuit that's 3 sizes too small. When you finally emerge, you're noticeably larger and your spikes are more pronounced. Your new skin is soft at first, making you vulnerable to attack. You stay hidden for several hours while your exoskeleton hardens. During this time, you're basically defenseless. If a predator found you now, there wouldn't be much you could do about it. But luck is on your side, and you complete the hardening process without incident. Now you're back in action, hungrier than ever. The molting process burned through a lot of energy, and your larger body needs more fuel to keep running. You resume your hunt for aphids, but you're not the same larva that hatched a few days ago. You're bigger, stronger, and more experienced. The ants that gave you trouble before don't seem quite so intimidating anymore. You find a new colony of aphids on a rose bush. These ones are particularly fat and juicy, having fed on the rich sap of the flowering plant. You waste no time getting to work. Your mandibles tear through them with practiced efficiency. You've become a killing machine, perfectly adapted for the job of pest control. Every aphid you consume is one less insect damaging the plant, though you're not doing this out of altruism. You're just trying to survive. The rosebush becomes your territory for several days. You patrol the leaves and stems, hunting down every aphid you can find. You even discover some scale insects hiding under the leaves, harder to crack than aphids, but worth the effort for their rich internal fluids. Your body continues to grow, and you molt again, then again. Each time, you emerge larger and more formidable. Other predators share your hunting grounds. You encounter another ladybug larva one day, slightly smaller than you. There's enough food for both of you, but that doesn't stop the territorial instinct from kicking in. You face off, mandibles extended, sizing each other up. The other larva makes the first move, lunging forward with surprising speed. You dodge to the side and counterattack, grabbing its head with your mandibles. The fight is brief but intense. You're evenly matched, but you have the advantage of size and experience. You manage to pin the other larva down, your mandibles pressed against its neck. You could kill it easily, but something holds you back. Maybe it's instinct, or maybe it's just that there's plenty of food to go around. You release your grip and back away. The other larva gets the message and retreats to a different part of the plant. As the days pass, you notice changes in your body that go beyond simple growth. Your skin is getting thicker and strange bumps are forming along your back. You're approaching the one that will transform you into something your final larval molt completely different. But that transformation is still days away, and in the meantime, you have work to do. The aphid population on your rosebush has been decimated. You've been so efficient at hunting that you're running out of prey. This is actually a good problem to have. It means you've been successful. But success doesn't fill your stomach, so you need to find new hunting grounds. You begin the journey to a nearby plant, crawling across open ground where you're exposed to predators from above. A shadow passes overhead. You freeze, pressing your body against the ground. It's a bird, probably a robin, scanning for insects. Your dark, spiky appearance helps you blend in with plant debris, but you're not invisible. The bird circles back, and you can see its head turning as it searches. You stay perfectly still, not even breathing. After what feels like an eternity, the bird moves on to investigate something else. You resume your journey, more cautious now. The open ground between plants is dangerous territory for a larva your size. Everything from birds to spiders to larger insects sees you as potential food. You move quickly but carefully, using whatever cover you can find. A fallen leaf provides temporary shelter, then a small rock, then the shadow of a larger plant. Finally, you reach your destination, a massive sunflower plant covered with clusters of aphids. This is the mother lode, enough food to sustain you through your remaining larval stages. You climb up the thick stem, past enormous leaves that dwarf anything you've encountered before. The scale of this plant is incredible from your perspective. The sunflower head towers above you like a yellow mountain. The aphids here are different too, larger and more numerous than any you've seen. They've formed dense colonies along the stem and leaf joints, so focused on feeding that they barely notice your approach. You position yourself at the edge of the nearest colony and begin your assault. Your mandibles work like mechanical harvesting equipment, grabbing, biting, and consuming with ruthless efficiency. But this sunflower isn't undefended. As you work your way through the aphid colony, you notice movement above you. A massive ant, easily 3 times your size, is making its way down the stem. This isn't like the smaller ants you encountered before. This one has mandibles that could easily cut you in half, and it's heading straight for you. You've got 2 choices, fight or flight. Running means abandoning this incredible food source. Fighting means risking everything against an opponent that clearly outmatches you. You make your decision. You're not the same helpless larva that hatched from an egg just weeks ago. You've grown, you've learned, and you've survived every challenge so far. This ant might be bigger, but you're not going down without a fight. Life as a ladybug larva is a constant battle for survival, but there's something even more challenging waiting for you. The transformation that's coming will test every instinct you've developed, and not every larva makes it through. But that's a story for another time. You position yourself for the fight of your life. The massive ant descends the stem with deliberate movements, its antenna twitching as it locks onto your position. You can see the light reflecting off its polished black exoskeleton, and those mandibles look like they could snap you in half without much effort. But you've come too far to back down now. The ant makes its move first, lunging forward with surprising speed for something its size. You dodge to the right, feeling the wind from its mandibles as they snap shut where your head was a moment before. You counter immediately, darting in low and clamping down on one of its legs. Your mandibles find their mark, penetrating the joint where the exoskeleton is thinnest. The ant recoils, trying to shake you loose, but you hold on tight. It thrashes violently, slamming you against the plant stem. Pain shoots through your body, but you don't let go. You know that if you release your grip now, those massive mandibles will find you. The ant tries a different approach, using its other legs to pry you loose. Sharp claws scrape against your exoskeleton, leaving scratches but not breaking through. Then you make a critical mistake. You adjust your grip, loosening it for just a second to get a better hold. The ant feels the change immediately and wrenches its leg free. You tumble backward, scrambling to regain your footing as those deadly mandibles come down toward you. You roll to the side just in time, the ant's jaws closing on empty air with a sharp snap. Now you're both circling each other, looking for an opening. The ant is wounded. You can see fluid leaking from where you bit its leg, but it's far from defeated. You're breathing hard, your energy reserves running low from the intense fight. This needs to end soon, one way or another. The ant charges again, but this time you're ready. Instead of dodging sideways, you drop flat against the stem and let it pass over you. As its body clears yours, you spring up and latch onto its back, right behind its head where it can't reach you with its mandibles. The ant goes crazy, spinning and bucking like a mechanical bull. But you've found the perfect position. You don't waste time. Your mandibles find the soft joint between the ant's head and thorax, and you bite down with everything you've got. The ant's movements become more frantic, then suddenly weaker. Its legs start to give out, and it stumbles sideways. You feel the fight leaving its body as your mandibles do their work. When the ant finally goes still, you release your grip and step back. You're exhausted, battered, but alive. More importantly, you've won. The aphid colony is yours now, and there's enough food here to last you through several more molts. You drag the ant's body to the edge of the colony, not to eat it, but to send a message to any other ants that might be thinking about interfering with your hunting. You spend the next hour methodically working through the aphids, refueling after the intense fight. Your body processes the protein and fats eagerly, already beginning repairs on the damage you sustained. The scratches on your exoskeleton will heal, and the bruised muscles will strengthen. Every challenge you survive makes you more formidable. Days pass in a blur of feeding and growing. You clear entire sections of the sunflower, moving systematically from colony to colony. Other insects give you a wide berth now. Word has spread somehow about what happened to the ant. Even the birds seem less interested in you. Maybe it's your size, or maybe it's the way you move with such obvious confidence. Your body is changing in ways that go beyond simple growth. Those bumps on your back are getting larger and more defined. Your skin feels different, thicker, but also more sensitive. You can sense vibrations in the air that you never noticed before. Something big is coming, and every instinct tells you to find a safe place to wait it out. You locate a spot on the underside of a large leaf, hidden from predators and sheltered from weather. It feels right somehow, like your body knows exactly what it needs. You secure yourself to the surface using silk threads that you didn't even know you could produce. Then you wait. The final molt begins differently than the others. Instead of your skin simply splitting and peeling away, your entire body seems to dissolve and rebuild itself from the inside out. You lose all sense of time and space. Your consciousness fades in and out as biological processes you don't understand remake you at the cellular level. When you finally emerge, everything has changed. Your body is no longer dark and spiky. Instead, you're covered in a hard, smooth shell that gleams like polished amber. Your legs are different, longer and more delicate. Your head has been completely restructured, with new eyes that can see colors and patterns you never imagined. But the most shocking change is your back. What were once bumps have become actual wing covers, bright red with distinct black spots. Beneath these covers are delicate flying wings, folded and ready for use. You're no longer a larva crawling through the world at ground level. You're a fully formed adult ladybug, ready to take to the skies. Your first flight is terrifying and exhilarating. You spread your wing covers, unfold your flying wings, and launch yourself into the air. The sensation is indescribable. Suddenly you're free from the constraints of crawling from leaf to leaf. The world opens up below you in all directions. You can see the entire garden from this perspective, spotting new plants heavy with aphid colonies that would have taken you days to reach on foot. But flying isn't just about transportation, it's about survival. A spider's web that would have been a death trap for your larval form is now just an obstacle to fly around. Birds that once seemed like unstoppable predators are now competition rather than threats. You're still small enough to be eaten, but your mobility gives you options you never had before. Your first landing is less graceful than your takeoff. You misjudge the distance to a leaf and crash into it sideways, tumbling across the surface before coming to a stop. Flying is clearly a skill that requires practice, but there's no time for extensive training. Your adult body has new needs and new instincts driving you forward. The hunger that dominated your larval existence has been replaced by something more complex. Yes, you still need to eat, but now you're also driven by urges you don't fully understand. You find yourself attracted to bright colors, especially yellow flowers. Your new eyes can detect ultraviolet patterns that guide you to nectar sources. Your diet has expanded beyond just aphids to include pollen, flower nectar, and honeydew. You discover a patch of marigolds in full bloom and land on one of the bright orange petals. Your mouth parts, now adapted for both chewing and lapping, work to extract the sweet nectar. It's a completely different eating experience than hunting aphids, more peaceful, less violent, but equally satisfying in its own way. While you're feeding, another ladybug lands on a nearby flower. This one is slightly larger than you, with a different spot pattern. Your new instincts immediately classify it as either competition or opportunity. You approach cautiously, antennae extended to pick up chemical signals. The interaction that follows will determine whether you fight, flee, or something else entirely. The other ladybug doesn't seem threatened by your approach. Instead, it continues feeding while keeping one eye on you. You notice that its movements are more confident than yours, suggesting it's been an adult longer. There might be something you can learn here, or there might be trouble brewing. Either way, you're about to discover that adult life brings its own set of challenges. Social dynamics among ladybugs are more complex than you realized during your larval stage. Territory still matters, but it's not just about food anymore. Mating rights, prime nesting sites, and access to the best hunting grounds all come into play. Your red shell and black spots aren't just for show. They're a warning system that tells other insects you taste terrible and should be avoided. A bird swoops down toward the flower patch, and both you and the other ladybug react instantly. Instead of simply hiding, you both employ the same defense strategy. You curl up into tight balls and drop off the flowers, landing in the grass below. To the bird, you look like small pebbles or bits of debris. Your bright colors, which attract mates and warn predators when you're active, become camouflage when you're motionless. The bird loses interest and flies away, leaving you and the other ladybug to uncurl and resume feeding. There's a moment of recognition between you, a shared understanding that you're both survivors in a world full of threats. The other ladybug moves closer, and you allow it. Maybe cooperation is better than competition after all. Together, you explore the garden with new efficiency. The other ladybug shows you hunting techniques you never learned as a larva. Instead of simply grabbing and eating aphids one by one, you learn to herd entire colonies, driving them into corners where they're easier to harvest. You discover that some plants produce better aphids than others, and that timing matters. Early morning hunting yields fatter, slower prey. Your flying skills improve rapidly with practice and guidance. You learn to read air currents, to spot predators from above, and to navigate using landmarks that are invisible from ground level. The garden that once seemed vast and mysterious becomes a mapped territory with known resources and hazards. But this partnership also reveals new tensions. When you find a particularly rich aphid colony, you both want access to it. When a potential mate appears, you become rivals instead of allies. Adult life is a constant balance between cooperation and competition, trust and suspicion. The seasonal changes that you barely noticed as a larva now dominate your existence. The days are getting shorter, and the air carries a chill that makes your muscles sluggish. Flowers are becoming scarce, and aphid populations are declining. Your body is sending you signals you don't yet understand, urges to find shelter, to conserve energy, to prepare for something your instincts know is coming. Life as an adult ladybug is more complex than anything you experienced as a larva, but there are challenges ahead that will test every survival skill you've learned. The changing seasons bring new threats and new opportunities, and not every ladybug makes it through what's coming next. The first sign that something's changing comes when you notice other ladybugs gathering in unusual places. You spot them clustered under loose bark, wedged into rock crevices, and packed together in hollow plant stems. Their behavior is different too, less aggressive, more focused on finding the perfect hiding spot than competing for food. Your own body is sending signals you can't ignore. The urge to eat constantly has faded, replaced by an overwhelming need to find shelter. Your metabolism is slowing down, and you feel drowsy even during the warmest part of the day. These aren't signs of illness, they're preparation for survival. You join a group of ladybugs that have found a gap between two fence boards. It's cramped, with dozens of your kind pressed together in the narrow space, but it feels right. The warmth from so many bodies creates a microclimate that will be crucial in the months ahead. Some of the ladybugs here look familiar. You recognize the one that taught you advanced hunting techniques, and another that you fought over territory just weeks ago. None of that matters now. As the temperature drops, your consciousness begins to fade. This isn't sleep as humans understand it. It's a complete shutdown of all non-essential systems. Your heart rate drops to almost nothing. Your breathing becomes barely detectable, and your brain activity reduces to the minimum needed to keep you alive. You're entering a state called diapause, and you'll stay this way until the world warms up again. Winter passes in darkness and cold. Snow covers the ground, ice forms on the plants, and most of the garden's inhabitants either die or disappear. But you and your companions remain hidden, your bodies barely functioning, but still alive. Predators can't find you, and the cold that would kill you if you were active actually helps preserve your dormant state. Some of your shelter mates don't make it through. Their bodies give out during the long months of dormancy, and they simply stop functioning. You're pressed so close together that you're literally touching the dead, but you can't move, can't react, can't even process what's happening. You exist in a state between life and death, waiting for conditions that may never return. Then, after months of nothingness, something changes. The air warms slightly, and light penetrates deeper into your hiding place. Your body begins to stir, systems slowly coming back online. It's a gradual process. First, your heart rate increases, then your breathing deepens, and finally, your consciousness returns. You're alive, but you're not the same ladybug that entered diapause. Your body is different now. The fat reserves you built up before winter are almost gone, burned through during the long dormancy. Your muscles are weak, your reflexes slow. Some of your companions are stirring too, but others remain motionless. The winter took its toll, and not everyone survived. You push your way out of the shelter, squeezing past dormant and dead bodies to reach the outside world. The garden looks completely different. Plants that were green and lush when you went to sleep are now bare sticks and dead stalks. The ground is muddy and cold, and there's no sign of the abundant insect life that once filled every leaf and flower. But you're not looking for food yet. You're looking for other survivors. Your body tells you it's time to mate, to ensure the next generation before your own time runs out. This urge is even stronger than the hunger that drove you as a larva. Every instinct you have is focused on reproduction. You take to the air on wings that feel stiff and unreliable after months of disuse. Flying is harder now, more labored, but you manage to stay airborne long enough to scout the area. Other ladybugs are emerging from their hiding places too, all driven by the same biological imperative. The garden is waking up, and mating season has begun. Finding a mate isn't as simple as locating another ladybug. There are specific signals, chemical messages, that indicate readiness and compatibility. You land on a tree branch where several potential partners have gathered. The competition is immediate and intense. Males outnumber females, and everyone knows that time is limited. You approach a female who seems receptive, but another male intercepts you. He's larger than you are, probably because he stored more fat reserves before winter, and he's not interested in sharing. The confrontation is brief but decisive. He pushes you away with enough force to send you tumbling off the branch. You recover and fly to another tree, looking for opportunities with less competition. Your persistence pays off when you find a female feeding alone on some early spring flowers. She doesn't flee when you approach, which you take as a positive sign. The courtship process involves a complex dance of chemical signals and physical positioning. You climb onto her back, and if she accepts you, mating can begin. The act itself is surprisingly long by insect standards. You remain connected for hours while sperm transfer takes place. During this time, you're both vulnerable to predators, but the drive to reproduce overrides caution. Other males may try to interfere, but once the process begins, it's difficult to interrupt. When the mating is complete, your role in the reproductive cycle is mostly finished. The female will carry your genetic material and use it to fertilize her eggs, but she doesn't need you for anything else. You separate and go your different ways, each focused on survival and the possibility of mating again. The female faces a much more complex challenge. She needs to find suitable plants for egg laying, test them for the presence of aphids that will feed her offspring, and deposit her eggs in locations that maximize their chances of survival. It's the same careful selection process your own mother went through, though you'll never know the outcome of her efforts. Your own future is uncertain. Some adult ladybugs survive multiple seasons, hibernating repeatedly and mating several times. Others wear out quickly, their bodies damaged by the stresses of reproduction and survival. You can feel the effects already. Your movements are less precise than they were as a newly emerged adult, and your appetite isn't quite what it used to be. The garden is slowly coming back to life around you. New plants are sprouting from the soil, and the first aphids of the season are beginning to appear on tender young shoots. Your hunting skills are rusty after the long winter, but they come back quickly. Muscle memory kicks in, and soon you're stalking prey with something approaching your old efficiency. But you're not the apex predator you once were. Younger ladybugs are emerging from pupation, fresh and energetic, with perfect reflexes and insatiable appetites. They move through the hunting grounds with the same confidence you once had, claiming the best territories and driving older competitors away from prime feeding spots. You adapt by becoming more selective in your hunting. Instead of competing directly with the younger generation, you focus on prey they overlook, hidden colonies in hard-to-reach places, smaller aphids that aren't worth their effort, unusual species that require specialized techniques to capture. Experience compensates for declining physical abilities. The seasonal cycle continues, and you find yourself preparing for another winter. This time, the process feels different. Your body doesn't store fat reserves as efficiently, and finding a good hibernation site requires more effort. The competition for prime shelter locations is fierce, and younger ladybugs often claim the best spots. You end up in a less ideal location, a pile of dead leaves that offers some protection but isn't as secure as the crevice you used the previous year. As consciousness fades and your body shuts down for the winter, you can't know whether you'll survive to see another spring. The odds are against you, but you've beaten worse odds before. This second winter is harder than the first. Your body's reserves run out sooner, and the cold penetrates deeper into your inadequate shelter. You drift in and out of awareness, sometimes conscious enough to feel the bite of freezing air, other times lost in a darkness so complete it might be death itself. When spring finally returns, you're one of the lucky few who stir back to life. Your body is a shadow of what it once was, thin, weak, and slow to respond. Many of your shelter mates didn't make it through, their bodies now just empty shells among the rotting leaves. But you're alive, and that means you have one more chance to pass on your genes. This final mating season is a desperate affair. Your movements are labored, your chemical signals weak, and younger males easily outcompete you for access to females. But persistence and experience give you an edge in finding opportunities others miss. You manage to mate once more, ensuring that some part of you will continue into the next generation. Your last days are spent in the same garden where you began life as a tiny larva. The plants have grown taller, new flowers have taken the place of old ones, and a fresh generation of insects fills every available niche. You hunt when you can, rest when you must, and gradually feel your strength ebbing away. One morning, you don't wake up. Your body remains curled on the leaf where you spent the night, wings folded, legs drawn up against your shell. To a casual observer, you might look like you're sleeping, but the stillness is absolute. Your time is over, but the cycle continues. Somewhere in the garden, tiny yellow eggs are hatching on carefully selected leaves. Your offspring are beginning their own journeys, facing the same challenges and opportunities that shaped your life. They carry your genetic legacy forward, along with the accumulated wisdom of countless generations who survived long enough to reproduce. The garden itself will outlast any individual ladybug, providing the stage where this ancient drama plays out year after year. New predators and prey will evolve, climate will change, and human activities will alter the landscape. But the fundamental struggle for survival and reproduction will continue. Your story ends, but the story of ladybug life goes on, written in the experiences of every larva that hatches, every adult that takes flight, and every egg that's carefully placed on a leaf chosen for its promise of abundance. Life as a ladybug might be brief, but it's also remarkably resilient, and there's something beautiful in that continuity. The days blur together as your body continues its slow decline. Your once sharp reflexes have dulled to the point where even the slowest aphids sometimes escape your grasp. The bright red of your wing covers has faded to a dull orange, and one of your spots has worn away completely from countless landings on rough surfaces. You're a veteran now, marked by survival, but showing every sign of the toll it's taken. You've developed a routine that works with your limitations. Early morning hunts when the cold makes other insects sluggish. Midday rest periods when the sun warms your stiff joints. Evening flights to scout for tomorrow's opportunities. It's not the aggressive, all day hunting schedule of your youth, but it keeps you fed and mobile. The garden has changed around you too. New plants have been introduced, others have died off, and the entire ecosystem has shifted in subtle ways. You've learned to adapt, finding aphid colonies on species you never encountered as a young adult. Your dietary preferences have evolved as well. You now seek out the sweetest nectars and the richest honeydew, your body craving easy calories over the lean protein that once sustained you. Other ladybugs treat you differently now. The younger ones show a kind of deference, stepping aside when you approach a feeding site. It's not fear exactly, but recognition of your status as a survivor. You've made it through multiple winters, multiple mating seasons, and countless predator encounters. That earns respect in the insect world, but respect doesn't make you immune to the realities of aging. Your vision isn't what it used to be, and you sometimes misjudge distances when landing. Your antennae don't pick up chemical signals as clearly, making it harder to locate food sources or detect approaching threats. Most concerning of all, your wings have developed a slight tremor that makes long flights exhausting. The arrival of autumn brings familiar urges, but they're weaker this time. Your body tries to store fat for hibernation, but the process is inefficient. You eat constantly, but gain little weight. The biological systems that once prepared you for winter dormancy are wearing out, like machinery that's been used beyond its intended lifespan. You search for hibernation sites with growing desperation. The best spots are already claimed by younger, stronger ladybugs. Rock crevices, bark gaps, and hollow stems fill up quickly, leaving you to settle for increasingly marginal locations. You eventually find space in a woodpile behind a garden shed. Not ideal, but it will have to do. The transition to dormancy is rougher this time. Instead of the smooth shutdown you experienced in previous years, your systems struggle to find the right balance. You drift in and out of consciousness for days before finally settling into true diapause. Even then, your sleep is fitful, marked by moments of semi-awareness that drain precious energy reserves. Seasonal winter is brutal. The woodpile offers less protection than your previous shelters, and cold air seeps through gaps between the logs. Snow melts and refreezes repeatedly, creating ice that conducts cold directly to your hiding place. Your body temperature drops lower than it should, pushing the boundaries of what you can survive. Predators find the woodpile too. A mouse discovers your cluster of hibernating ladybugs and consumes several of your companions before moving on. You're too deep in dormancy to react, but some primitive part of your brain registers the disturbance. Death is everywhere during winter, patient and persistent. Halfway through the cold season, you almost don't make it. Your heart stops beating for several minutes, your brain activity flatlines, and your body temperature drops to within degrees of freezing solid. But somehow, some stubborn spark of life refuses to be extinguished. Your heart stutters back to life, and you continue your death-like sleep. When spring finally arrives, you're among the last to wake up. Other ladybugs have already emerged and begun the search for mates, but you remain motionless in the woodpile. Your body needs extra time to restart systems that came dangerously close to permanent shutdown. When consciousness finally returns, it's fragmented and uncertain. Your emergence from hibernation is clumsy and painful. Muscles that barely functioned before winter have atrophied further. Your exoskeleton has developed hairline cracks that leak precious body fluids. Moving from the woodpile to the nearest plant requires multiple rest stops, and you're breathing the time you reach a hard by simple dandelion. The garden is full of activity, but you move through it like a ghost. Young ladybugs dart past you with the energy you remember having lifetimes ago. Their bright colors and perfect spots make your faded appearance even more obvious. You're a relic from another season, still alive but clearly past your prime. Mating is no longer a realistic option. Your chemical signals are too weak, your movements too slow, and your competition too fierce. You watch from a distance as younger males court females with elaborate displays you can no longer perform. Your genetic legacy will have to rest on previous seasons' offspring, assuming any of them survived to adulthood. Without the driving urge to reproduce, your existence becomes simpler, but also emptier. You hunt when hungry, rest when tired, and spend long periods simply sitting in the sun. The frantic energy that once pushed you through each day has been replaced by a kind of peaceful resignation. You're no longer fighting to build a future, you're just trying to maintain the present. Your hunting success rate plummets as your reflexes continue to deteriorate. Aphids that would have been easy prey in your youth now require multiple attempts to catch. Sometimes you miss entirely, your mandibles snapping shut on empty air while your target escapes. The embarrassment is almost worse than the hunger. You develop new strategies out of necessity. Instead of active hunting, you position yourself near ant-tended aphid colonies and wait for workers to become separated from their guardians. You focus on newly molted insects whose soft exoskeletons make them vulnerable. You even resort to scavenging, feeding on insects killed by other predators. The other survivors from your hibernation group are facing similar challenges. You recognize a few individuals from their distinctive spot patterns, though like you, they're all showing signs of wear. There's an unspoken understanding between you, a shared knowledge of what it means to have outlasted most of your generation. One by one, your contemporaries disappear. You find one motionless on a leaf after a particularly cool night, apparently unable to regulate her body temperature well enough to survive the chill. Another simply fails to wake up from an afternoon rest, his body finally succumbing to the accumulated damage of multiple seasons. Each loss reminds you of your own mortality. Your daily range shrinks as flying becomes more difficult. Where once you might have covered the entire garden in a single day, now you're limited to a small section near your preferred resting spots. The world that seemed so vast when you first took flight has contracted to a few familiar plants and pathways. Food becomes an obsession again, but for different reasons than during your larval stage. Then you were building towards something, growing, molting, transforming. Now you're simply trying to maintain basic functions. Every calorie consumed goes toward keeping your damaged systems operational for another day. You notice changes in your behavior that you don't fully understand. Sometimes you find yourself motionless for hours, not resting, but simply existing in a state of reduced awareness. Your response to threats is delayed, and you no longer react to stimuli that would have triggered immediate action in your prime. It's as if your brain is conserving energy by shutting down non essential processes. The arrival of a new generation of ladybugs drives home just how much you've changed. Fresh from pupation, they move with the same aggressive confidence you once possessed. Their colors are brilliant, their movements precise, their appetites enormous. They represent everything you used to be and can never be again. Watching them hunt is both inspiring and depressing. They employ techniques you taught yourself through trial and error, but they execute them with a perfection you never achieved. They're faster, stronger, and more efficient than you ever were. Evolution has continued in the brief span of your lifetime, and you're already obsolete. You try to avoid direct competition with these newcomers, but sometimes encounters are unavoidable. When a young male challenges you for access to an aphid colony, you barely put up a fight. Your threatening postures are half-hearted, your movements telegraphed and slow. The youngster doesn't even need to use force. He simply waits you out until you give up and move on. Despite your declining condition, you still have moments of unexpected success. Your experience sometimes compensates for physical limitations, allowing you to spot opportunities that younger ladybugs miss. You know which plants are likely to harbor hidden aphid colonies, which times of day offer the best hunting conditions, and which weather patterns bring prey to the surface. These small victories become increasingly important as your world contracts. A successful hunt can sustain you for days, both physically and psychologically. The familiar satisfaction of a full stomach and the muscle memory of efficient predation remind you that you're still a ladybug, still capable of fulfilling your biological role, even if your performance has declined. Your relationship with the garden itself has evolved over the seasons. What once seemed like an endless frontier now feels like home territory. You know every plant, every hiding spot, every danger and opportunity. This intimate knowledge of your environment provides comfort and practical advantages that younger ladybugs lack. The changing seasons affect you more profoundly than they did in your youth. Summer heat makes you lethargic and forces you to seek shade during the hottest parts of the day. Cool nights leave you stiff and slow to warm up in the morning. Your body's temperature regulation system is failing, making you increasingly dependent on external conditions. You begin to spend more time in sheltered locations, under leaves, in bark crevices, or among dense vegetation. These spots offer protection from weather and predators, but they also limit your mobility and hunting opportunities. It's a trade-off between safety and sustenance that becomes increasingly difficult to balance. Your sleep patterns change too. Instead of the regular day-night cycle that once governed your activities, you now drift in and out of consciousness irregularly. Sometimes you're active during what should be rest periods, and sometimes you sleep through prime hunting hours. Your internal clock is breaking down along with everything else. Memory becomes unreliable in ways that surprise you. You sometimes forget the location of food sources you discovered just hours before. Familiar landmarks become confusing, and you occasionally find yourself lost in parts of the garden you've known for seasons. Yet distant memories from your larval stage remain crystal clear, as if your brain is prioritizing long-term storage over short-term function. The approach of another autumn brings dread rather than the familiar preparation instincts. You know that your body lacks the resources for another hibernation attempt. The fat reserves that once sustained you through winter simply aren't building up, despite your efforts to eat constantly. Your metabolism has become too inefficient to support long-term dormancy. Other aging ladybugs seem to reach the same conclusion. Instead of seeking hibernation sites, many of them continue their normal activities well into the cooling weather. It's as if they've made an unconscious decision to face the end on their own terms rather than risk a winter they're unlikely to survive. You join this group of resigned veterans, hunting and resting through days that grow steadily shorter and colder. Each morning that you wake up feels like a small victory. Each successful hunt extends your existence by a little more. You're not fighting for a future anymore. You're simply celebrating the present for as long as it lasts. The first frost arrives earlier than usual, catching many insects unprepared. You wake up to find your body stiff with cold, your joints barely functional until the sun warms you enough to move. Other ladybugs don't wake up at all, their bodies finally succumbing to temperatures they once would have survived easily. You make it through that first frost, and several more, but each one takes a greater toll. Your movements become increasingly labored, your hunting success rate drops to near zero, and you spend most of your time in a state of semi-dormancy. You're running on fumes now, your body consuming itself to maintain basic functions. The end, when it comes, is surprisingly peaceful. You're resting on a leaf that catches the morning sun, a spot you've favored for weeks. The warmth feels good against your faded wing covers, and for a moment you experience something like the contentment you knew as a successful adult. Your body simply stops working. No struggle, no pain, just a gradual cessation of all the processes that kept you alive. You remain on that leaf for several days, your body slowly drying in the autumn air. To any observer, you might look like you're sleeping, but the stillness is complete and final. Eventually, wind or rain will dislodge you, and you'll become part of the soil that nourishes the plants, where future generations of ladybugs will hunt and mate and struggle for survival. Your individual story is over, but it's just one thread in a tapestry that stretches back millions of years and forward into an unknowable future. Somewhere in the garden, eggs you fertilized months ago might be developing into larvae that will face the same challenges you overcame. The cycle continues, indifferent to any single participant, but dependent on all of them. Life as a ladybug is brief and brutal, but it's also remarkably persistent. Every generation builds on the genetic wisdom of those that came before, adapting to new challenges while maintaining the essential strategies that have worked for millennia. Your contribution to that ongoing story is now complete, but the story itself will continue as long as there are gardens to explore and aphids to hunt. The final frost that claims you also signals the end for most of your generation, but it's not the end of the story. Deep in the soil beneath your resting place, eggs laid months ago by younger females continue their development. Winter doesn't stop the biological processes inside those protective shells. It just slows them down. Your genetic legacy, mixed with countless others, waits in microscopic form for the return of warmth. Spring arrives with the same indifference it always has, melting snow and coaxing new growth from dormant roots. The garden transforms yet again, but this time you're not there to see it. Fresh dandelions push through the soil where your body decomposed, their roots drawing nutrients from what was once your exoskeleton. It's a more literal continuation than most creatures achieve. You've become part of the very plants that will feed the next generation. The first eggs begin hatching when soil temperatures reach that critical threshold your mother once recognized instinctively. Tiny larvae emerge onto leaves that have never known your touch, but they carry instructions written in their DNA by countless generations of survivors. They don't know your story, but they're living variations of it from their very first breath. These new larvae face the same fundamental challenges you did, but their world has changed in subtle ways. The garden's plant composition has shifted slightly, introducing new aphid species and eliminating others. Climate patterns have altered the timing of insect emergence and flower blooming. Human activity has added new chemicals to the environment and removed old ones. Evolution never stops, and adaptation is always required. Some of these changes work in the larvae's favor. A new variety of rosebush produces aphids with lowered defensive chemical concentrations, making them easier prey. An invasive plant species attracts massive aphid colonies that previous generations never encountered. A reduction in pesticide use means fewer accidental poisonings during hunting. Other changes create fresh obstacles. A drought reduces plant sap quality, producing smaller, less nutritious aphids. New predatory insects arrive in the garden ecosystem, adding competition for food sources. Climate shifts alter the timing of seasonal cycles, throwing off the carefully evolved synchronization between predator and prey life cycles. But adaptation is what ladybugs do best. Within a single generation, behavioral modifications begin appearing. Larvae learn to exploit the new food sources while avoiding novel dangers. Their hunting strategies adjust to accommodate different prey distributions. Their development timing shifts to match altered seasonal patterns. The larvae that emerge from your genetic contributions carry subtle variations that might give them advantages in this changing world, maybe slightly improved cold tolerance, or enhanced ability to detect certain chemical signals, or more efficient metabolism during food-scarce periods. These tiny differences, invisible to casual observation, could mean the difference between survival and extinction when conditions become extreme. One larva in particular, carrying a combination of your genes and those of your last mate, shows remarkable adaptability. It hatches earlier than its siblings, giving it first access to newly emerged aphid colonies. Its mandibles develop slightly differently, allowing more efficient processing of tough-shelled prey. Its metabolism runs more efficiently, requiring fewer calories to maintain growth. This larva faces the same progression you did: the constant hunger, the molting cycles, the territorial battles, the predator encounters. But its responses are subtly different, refined by generations of selection pressure. When ants attack, it employs defensive strategies that combine inherited instincts with real-time learning. When food becomes scarce, it adapts its hunting patterns more quickly than its competitors. The transformation to adult occurs with the same dramatic biological reorganization you experienced, but the resulting ladybug is better suited to current environmental conditions. Its wing structure provides slightly more efficient flight in the altered wind patterns caused by new garden landscaping. Its chemical sensors are more sensitive to the pheromones of available prey species. This new adult enters a mating competition that's both familiar and different. The basic drives remain the same: find food, avoid predators, reproduce successfully. But the tactics required for success have evolved in response to changing conditions. Competition is fiercer in some areas, more cooperative in others. Mating rituals have developed subtle variations that improve reproductive success rates. The female carries fertilized eggs through a winter that's colder than the ones you survived, but her physiological adaptations allow her to maintain viable embryos despite the harsh conditions. When spring returns, her offspring will represent another step forward in the ongoing evolutionary process that has shaped ladybug survival for millions of years. Each generation faces unique challenges while drawing on accumulated genetic wisdom from all previous generations. The strategies that allowed you to survive multiple winters contribute to this inherited knowledge base, even though the specific conditions you faced will never repeat exactly. Your experiences, encoded in DNA and passed forward, become tools for future survival. The garden ecosystem continues its own evolution around these changing ladybug populations. Plants develop new defensive chemicals in response to changing herbivore pressures. Aphid species adapt their reproductive cycles to avoid peak predator activity. Ant colonies adjust their farming practices to protect their aphid livestock more effectively. This creates an ever-shifting landscape of opportunity and challenge that keeps natural selection pressure constant. No species can afford to remain static when all their competitors and prey are continuously evolving. The ladybugs that thrive are those that maintain the flexibility to adapt while preserving the core survival strategies that have proven effective across geological time. Your descendants spread throughout the garden and beyond, carried by wind currents and human transportation to new environments. Some populations encounter conditions similar to those you knew, while others face completely novel challenges in urban environments, that's agricultural fields or wilderness areas. Each population develops its own adaptive responses while maintaining the fundamental ladybug blueprint. In urban settings, ladybugs learn to navigate concrete and glass surfaces, hunt among ornamental plants with unfamiliar chemical profiles, and avoid new categories of predators like house cats and aggressive bird species. Their life cycles adjust to artificial lighting that disrupts natural day-night cycles. Their hibernation strategies adapt to heated buildings and underground spaces. Agricultural populations face different pressures, dealing with massive monoculture plantings, scheduled pesticide applications, and mechanical harvesting equipment. They learn to exploit the boom-bust cycles of crop pest populations, timing their own reproduction to coincide with peak aphid availability. They develop resistance to low-level chemical exposure while maintaining sensitivity to natural prey and predator signals. Wilderness populations encounter the most traditional challenges, but even these environments are changing as climate patterns shift and invasive species alter ecosystem dynamics. These ladybugs maintain behaviors closest to ancestral patterns while still adapting to contemporary environmental changes. All these diverging populations remain connected through occasional gene flow, preventing any single group from becoming too specialized for their local conditions. Migration and wind dispersal ensure that beneficial adaptations can spread between populations while maintaining overall species resilience. The genetic contributions you made during your lifetime become part of this vast, interconnected network of evolutionary experimentation. Oh, your successful survival strategies get tested in thousands of different environments and conditions. The ones that prove broadly useful spread throughout the species, while those suited only to specific conditions remain localized. This process operates on timescales far beyond any individual lifespan, but its effects accumulate generation by generation. The ladybugs living in the garden 50 years from now will carry refined versions of the traits that allowed you to survive multiple seasons. They'll face challenges you never encountered, using tools derived from your experiences and those of countless other successful individuals. The cycle of birth, growth, reproduction, and death continues with mechanical regularity, but each iteration carries forward the lessons learned by previous generations. Your brief existence added to the sum total of ladybug knowledge about survival in a changing world. That knowledge persists in the genetic memory of the species long after your individual story ended. The garden where you lived your entire life will eventually disappear, replaced by buildings or different landscaping or natural succession. But the ladybugs that learned to survive in that specific environment will carry those skills to new locations. The adaptations they developed will prove useful in similar habitats elsewhere, ensuring that your environmental legacy extends far beyond the original location. Human observers occasionally notice individual ladybugs and marvel at their behavior, unaware of the complex evolutionary history behind each simple action. They see a ladybug hunting aphids and don't realize they're witnessing the results of millions of years of refinement. They watch mating rituals without recognizing the genetic calculations involved in partner selection. But the ladybugs don't need human understanding to continue their ancient work. They carry forward the accumulated wisdom of their species through pure biological programming, each individual playing their part in the larger story of survival and adaptation. Your contribution to that story is now complete, integrated into the ongoing narrative of life finding ways to persist despite constant change. The sun rises on another day in the garden, illuminating new flowers and fresh growth. Somewhere among the leaves, tiny larvae are beginning their own journeys toward adulthood. They don't know they carry your genetic legacy, and they don't need to. The instructions for survival are written in their DNA, refined by your experiences and those of countless others who faced similar challenges and lived long enough to reproduce. Life as a ladybug continues its endless cycle, each generation building on the successes of those that came before while facing challenges that require new solutions. Your story has ended, but the larger story of which you were a part continues writing itself one day, one hunt, one molt, one mating at a time. The individual chapters may be brief, but the book itself has been in progress for millions of years and shows no signs of reaching a conclusion. The garden settles into its familiar rhythm as another season begins, but you won't be part of it this time. Your body has returned to the soil, enriching the very plants where your offspring now begin their own struggles. The decomposition process that claimed you feeds into the larger cycle that sustains the entire ecosystem. Nothing is wasted, nothing is truly lost, just transformed into different forms of the same essential elements. Your genetic material lives on in dozens of larvae scattered across the garden, each one carrying a unique combination of traits inherited from generations of survivors. Some possess your particular knack for detecting ant movements before they become threats. Others inherited your efficient mandible structure that made quick work of tough-shelled prey. A few carry the metabolic adaptations that helped you survive multiple harsh winters. These traits don't guarantee success, but they provide options. When environmental pressures mount, having multiple genetic strategies increases the odds that some individuals will find ways to cope. Your descendants represent one set of solutions in an ongoing experiment that has been running for millions of years. The first major test comes sooner than expected. A late spring cold snap catches many newly hatched larvae unprepared, but those carrying your cold tolerance genes weather the temperature drop better than their siblings. They remain active while others become sluggish, giving them access to food sources that temporarily lack competition. Small advantages compound quickly in the brutal world of larval competition. One particular larva, carrying a potent combination of your hunting instincts and your last mate's enhanced chemical detection abilities, emerges as a dominant force on its chosen plant. It clears aphid colonies with ruthless efficiency, growing faster and molting more successfully than its competitors. By the time it reaches its final larval stage, it's noticeably larger and more robust than average. But size isn't everything in the insect world. Another descendant, smaller but more agile, survives by specializing in prey that larger predators overlook. It develops techniques for hunting in tight spaces where bulk becomes a disadvantage. Its strategy of avoiding direct competition proves just as successful as the brute force approach of its larger sibling. The diversity of survival strategies among your offspring reflects the complex genetic legacy you contributed to the species. Each successful approach adds to the toolkit available for future generations. Each failure eliminates less effective combinations, refining the overall genetic pool through natural selection's relentless editing process. As these new adults emerge and begin their own reproductive cycles, they carry forward not just your genes, but also the environmental knowledge embedded in their DNA. They instinctively know which plants are most likely to harbor aphid colonies, even though they've never encountered those specific species before. They recognize threat patterns that helped you survive, despite facing predators you never encountered. This inherited knowledge isn't perfect or complete. It's more like a rough sketch that each individual must fill in with personal experience. The genetic instructions provide a starting framework, but survival still requires learning, adaptation, and no small amount of luck. Your descendants must write their own stories, using the tools you helped provide. Some of those stories unfold in familiar locations. The rosebush where you spent your final successful hunting season now hosts a new generation of predators. They patrol the same stems you once claimed, hunting descendants of the aphids you once consumed. The territory you defended briefly becomes contested ground again as young adults establish their own domains. Other descendants venture into areas you never explored, carried by wind currents, or simply driven by curiosity to investigate new territories. They encounter plant species you never knew existed, prey with different defensive strategies, and predators with novel hunting techniques. Each new environment demands fresh adaptations while building on inherited foundations. The urban expansion that slowly encroaches on the garden creates entirely new niches for exploration. Some of your descendants adapt to life among ornamental plantings that offer different seasonal patterns than wild vegetation. They learn to navigate human created landscapes while maintaining their essential predatory role in modified ecosystems. These urban adapted populations develop subtle differences from their garden dwelling relatives. Their flight patterns adjust to navigate around buildings and artificial structures. Their chemical sensitivity adapts to filter out industrial pollutants while maintaining detection capabilities for natural prey and predator signals. Their hibernation strategies incorporate heated buildings and protected alcoves. Meanwhile, descendants that disperse into agricultural areas face different pressures entirely. They encounter massive aphid populations during crop infestations, providing feast or famine conditions that favor different survival strategies. They must cope with scheduled pesticide applications while capitalizing on the abundant food sources that intensive agriculture sometimes provides. Each population develops its own adaptive responses while maintaining genetic connections to other groups through occasional migration and interbreeding. This creates a network of local adaptations that can spread beneficial mutations throughout the larger population while maintaining overall species coherence. The genetic contributions you made during your brief lifetime become part of this vast evolutionary experiment. Your successful survival strategies get tested across multiple environments and conditions. The traits that prove broadly useful spread through the species, while those suited only to specific circumstances remain as specialized tools for particular situations. This process operates according to principles you never understood but participated in nonetheless. Your drive to survive and reproduce wasn't conscious strategy. It was biological programming refined over countless generations. Yet your success in following those programs contributed to their continued effectiveness and evolution. The mating choices you made during your adult seasons added another layer of complexity to your genetic legacy. By selecting partners with complementary traits, you helped create offspring with novel combinations of survival tools. Some of these combinations prove more effective than either parents' individual adaptations, representing genuine evolutionary advances. Your final mate, who survived longer than you did, contributed her own successful traits to several broods of offspring. Her enhanced winter survival capabilities, combined with your hunting efficiency, produced larvae that excelled in both growth and dormancy phase of the life cycle. These individuals became founding members of a particularly successful genetic lineage. The environmental challenges that tested your generation continue to shape your descendants, but they also face new pressures that require fresh solutions. Climate patterns shift gradually, altering the timing of seasonal cycles that ladybug life cycles must match to survive. Temperature extremes become more frequent, favoring individuals with broader tolerance ranges. Plant communities evolve their own responses to changing conditions, sometimes in ways that affect their insect inhabitants. New defensive chemicals appear in leaves, creating novel challenges for herbivorous insects and opportunities for their predators. Flowering patterns shift, altering the availability of nectar sources that adult ladybugs depend on for energy. These ecosystem level changes create selection pressures that operate over longer timescales than individual lifetimes. The adaptations that helped you survive represent solutions to environmental challenges that existed during your era. Your descendants inherit those solutions while developing new ones for contemporary problems. The most successful lineages are those that maintain flexibility while preserving core survival capabilities. They adapt to new conditions without losing the essential traits that made their ancestors successful. Your genetic contributions become part of this balancing act between conservation and innovation. Some of your descendants become specialists, developing enhanced abilities for particular types of hunting or specific environmental conditions. Others remain generalists, maintaining broad capabilities that serve them well in varied circumstances. Both strategies contribute to overall species resilience, providing options for different scenarios. The predator-prey relationships that structured your existence continue to evolve as well. Aphid species develop new defensive strategies in response to ladybug hunting pressure. Antispecies refine their livestock protection techniques. Birds and spiders adapt their hunting methods to more effectively capture ladybugs. Each change ripples through the entire ecosystem. Your descendants must navigate these shifting relationships while maintaining their role as effective predators. They inherit your basic hunting instincts, but must modify techniques to address new defensive behaviors in their prey. They carry forward your predator avoidance reflexes while developing responses to novel threats. The garden ecosystem, where you spent your entire life, continues to host this ongoing evolutionary drama, but it's just one theater in a much larger production. Similar interactions play out in ecosystems around the world, each contributing to the global evolution of ladybug survival strategies. Migration patterns connect these distant populations, ensuring that successful adaptations discovered in one location can eventually spread to others. A mutation that provides cold tolerance in northern populations might eventually reach southern groups, where it remains dormant until climate changes make it valuable. Genetic diversity preserved in stable environments becomes crucial when conditions shift dramatically. Your individual contribution to this vast process was necessarily small, but every successful reproduction event adds to the cumulative knowledge encoded in the species' DNA. The traits that helped you survive multiple seasons become part of the toolkit available to future generations facing similar challenges. The larvae hatching in the garden today carry instructions written by countless successful ancestors, including you. They don't consciously access this inherited wisdom, but it guides their behavior at every critical decision point. When to molt, how to hunt, where to seek shelter, when to mate, all these choices are influenced by genetic programming refined through millions of years of trial and error. Your story has ended, but it continues to influence every new chapter written by your descendants. The hunting techniques you developed through painful trial and error become instinctive behaviors for larvae that never knew you existed. The mating preferences that guided your reproductive choices help shape the genetic combinations that will face future environmental challenges. The physical structures that made you an effective predator, mandible shape, leg strength, wing design, chemical sensors, all become part of the inherited blueprint that defines what it means to be a ladybug. Your body's solutions to the problems of survival and reproduction contribute to the species template that guides development in every new generation. Even your failures contribute valuable information to this evolutionary database. The hunting strategies that didn't work, the environmental conditions that nearly killed you, the mating attempts that failed, all these experiences help refine the genetic programs that guide future behavior. Natural selection learns from mistakes as well as successes. The garden continues its seasonal cycles with mechanical regularity, but each iteration brings subtle changes that accumulate over time. The ladybugs living there 50 years from now will inhabit a recognizably similar but meaningfully different world. They'll face challenges you never encountered while drawing on survival strategies that trace their origins back to your experiences and those of your contemporaries. This ongoing process of adaptation and refinement has been operating since the first ladybugs evolved millions of years ago. Your lifetime represented just one tiny moment in this vast timeline, but it was a moment that mattered. Every successful survival and reproduction event contributes to the species' ability to persist through changing conditions. The genetic legacy you created will continue to influence ladybug evolution for generations to come. Some of your descendants will face environmental challenges that haven't existed yet, using tools derived from your experiences to solve problems you never imagined. Others will encounter conditions similar to those you survived, applying refined versions of your successful strategies. The cycle of birth, growth, reproduction, and death continues with the same relentless rhythm that structured your existence, but each generation builds on the accumulated wisdom of those that came before. Your brief time in the garden added to that wisdom, helping to write instruction manuals that future larvae will follow instinctively. The sun rises on another day in the ever-changing garden, illuminating flowers that didn't exist during your lifetime and shining on larvae that carry your genetic signature. They hunt with mandibles shaped by your DNA, flee from predators using reflexes you helped refine, and molt according to schedules influenced by your successful development timing. They don't know your story, but they live variations of it every day. The fundamental challenges remain the same, even as specific conditions continue to evolve. Food must be found, predators must be avoided, mates must be located, and offspring must be produced. The methods for accomplishing these goals change gradually over time, but the underlying imperatives remain constant. Your contribution now to this eternal process is now complete, integrated into the vast biological database that guides species survival. The individual chapters may be brief, but the book continues writing itself through every successful hunt, every completed molt, every mating flight, and every egg deposited on a carefully chosen leaf. Life as a ladybug goes on, shaped by millions of years of accumulated experience and guided by genetic instructions that include your own successful survival strategies. The story continues, one generation at a time, building toward futures that no individual can imagine, but that the species as a whole will be prepared to face. Oh, your world has become smaller in ways you don't fully understand. The sharp edges of hunger that once drove every decision have dulled into something more manageable but less urgent. Food remains important, but the desperate need to consume every available aphid has been replaced by a more selective approach. You can afford to be picky now, choosing the fattest prey and leaving smaller targets for hungrier competitors. This shift in priorities reflects deeper changes happening throughout your body. The rapid growth phases that defined your larval existence have given way to maintenance metabolism focused on preserving what you've already built. Your exoskeleton has reached its final dimensions. Your wing muscles have developed their full power, and your reproductive organs are preparing for their ultimate purpose. The garden looks different from your elevated adult perspective. Heights that seemed impossible to reach as a crawling larva are now accessible with a few wing beats. The territorial boundaries that once defined your entire world have dissolved into a vast landscape of interconnected hunting grounds and potential nesting sites. You're no longer trapped by the limited mobility that made every leaf a potential prison. But with this newfound freedom comes a different kind of responsibility. Your actions now affect more than just your own survival. Every hunt you make removes prey that other predators might need. Every territory you claim denies resources to competitors. Every mate you pursue influences the genetic makeup of the next generation. You've become a participant in ecosystem dynamics that extend far beyond your individual needs. The seasonal rhythms that barely registered during your larval focus on growth now dominate your daily decision-making. Temperature fluctuations affect your flight capability and hunting efficiency. Daylight duration influences your activity patterns and energy reserves. Weather changes trigger behavioral responses you don't consciously control but instinctively follow. You begin to notice patterns in other species' behavior that escaped your attention as a single-minded larva. Ants become more aggressive during certain weather conditions. Aphids cluster differently depending on plant stress levels. Birds adjust their hunting schedules in response to insect activity patterns. This environmental awareness helps you predict resource availability and avoid dangerous situations. Your chemical communication abilities have reached full development, allowing complex interactions with other ladybugs that were impossible during your larval stage. You can detect subtle differences in pheromone signatures that indicate health status, mating readiness, and territorial claims. This chemical language operates below the level of conscious thought, but influences every social encounter. The urge to explore drives you beyond the familiar boundaries of your birth territory. You follow air currents that carry promising scents, investigate plant communities you've never encountered, and test your hunting skills against unfamiliar prey species. Each expedition expands your knowledge of available resources while exposing you to new risks and opportunities. During one such exploration, you discover a greenhouse complex attached to a nearby residence. The controlled environment inside offers year-round warmth and abundant plant life, but it also presents challenges you've never faced. The glass barriers create invisible obstacles that interfere with navigation. Artificial lighting disrupts normal behavioral cues. Human activity introduces unpredictable disturbances. The aphid populations inside the greenhouse are unlike anything in your outdoor experience. Protected from weather and natural predators, they've grown to enormous sizes and developed behaviors adapted to their sheltered environment. They move more slowly but in larger groups, creating concentrated food sources that require different hunting strategies. Your first attempts at greenhouse hunting are clumsy and inefficient. The confined space makes your usual flight patterns impossible. The smooth glass surfaces provide no purchase for landing and takeoff. The warm, humid air affects your wing performance in unexpected ways. You're forced to adapt techniques developed for outdoor conditions to an entirely artificial environment. But adaptation is what your species does best. Within days, you've modified your approach to exploit the greenhouse's unique conditions. You learn to use reflective surfaces for navigation, time your activities to avoid human presence, and develop hunting patterns suited to the confined space. The abundant food sources make the learning curve worthwhile. Other ladybugs discover the greenhouse too, drawn by the same chemical signals that attracted you. Competition for prime hunting spots becomes intense as multiple individuals try to establish territories in the limited space. The social dynamics that govern outdoor interactions become compressed and intensified within the greenhouse walls. You form an uneasy alliance with another adult who arrived shortly after you. Neither of you is strong enough to claim the entire greenhouse, but together you can defend the richest aphid colonies from other intruders. The partnership involves constant negotiation over territory boundaries and resource sharing, but it proves more effective than individual competition. The greenhouse environment affects your perception of seasonal cycles in subtle ways. The constant warmth and artificial lighting disrupt the natural cues that normally trigger behavioral changes. Your body's preparation for winter dormancy becomes confused by mixed signals from your environment. Internal biological clocks struggle to synchronize with external conditions that no longer match evolutionary expectations. This disconnection from natural rhythms creates stress that manifests in various ways. Your hunting efficiency decreases despite abundant prey availability. Your flight patterns become erratic and energy intensive. Your chemical communication becomes less precise, leading to misunderstandings with other ladybugs. The greenhouse's advantages come with hidden costs that only become apparent over time. You eventually leave the greenhouse environment and return to outdoor conditions, but the experience has changed your behavior in permanent ways. You've learned to exploit artificial environments while maintaining your natural hunting instincts. You've developed tolerance for human proximity that serves you well in increasingly developed landscapes. You've expanded your prey recognition to include greenhouse-adapted aphid species. The skills acquired during your greenhouse adventure prove valuable when you encounter other human-modified environments. Garden centers, plant nurseries, and agricultural facilities all present similar opportunities and challenges. Your ability to adapt hunting strategies to confined spaces and artificial conditions gives you access to resources that less flexible competitors cannot exploit. But these human-created environments also expose you to novel dangers that your evolutionary programming never anticipated. Pesticide residues on plants can cause delayed poisoning effects. Air conditioning systems create unpredictable air currents that interfere with flight control. Glass barriers cause collision injuries that can damage delicate wing structures. Modern environments offer both opportunities and threats in unprecedented combinations. Your reproductive instincts begin to strengthen as your body reaches full maturity. The drive to hunt for personal survival becomes overshadowed by the need to build energy reserves for mating and egg production. Your behavior shifts toward activities that support reproductive success rather than individual growth and maintenance. Finding suitable mates becomes a complex challenge that involves balancing multiple competing factors. Chemical compatibility must be assessed through pheromone exchanges. Physical condition must be evaluated through behavioral displays. Territorial quality must be considered for its impact on offspring survival. The decision-making process involves calculations that operate below conscious awareness but determine genetic legacy. Your first serious mating attempt occurs with an individual who shares your territory near the greenhouse complex. The courtship process involves elaborate behavioral sequences that test compatibility and commitment. Physical positioning, chemical exchange, and timing must all align properly for successful reproduction. The entire process is vulnerable to interruption by predators, weather changes, and competing suitors. The mating itself is a prolonged affair that leaves both participants vulnerable to attack. You remain connected for hours while sperm transfer takes place, unable to flee or fight effectively if threats arise. The evolutionary trade-off between reproductive success and immediate survival creates tension that you experience as a constant state of alertness despite physical immobility. When the mating is complete, your role in reproduction shifts towards supporting your partner's egg-laying activities. You help identify suitable plants for oviposition, defend chosen sites from competitors, and provide protection during the vulnerable egg-laying process. Your continued presence increases the chances that your genetic contribution will survive to adulthood. The female's egg-laying strategy reflects evolutionary wisdom accumulated over millions of generations. She tests potential sites by analyzing chemical signals from plants, assessing aphid population density, and evaluating exposure to weather and predators. Each egg placement represents a calculated gamble about future environmental conditions that will determine larval survival chances. You watch as she carefully deposits clusters of bright yellow eggs on the undersides of carefully chosen leaves, each inktively but cannot articulate. The plant's location has been selected based on criteria you understand and show signs of aphid infestation, but not overcrowding. The leaves provide shelter from direct sunlight and driving rain. The locations offer multiple escape routes for newly hatched larvae. Your genetic material is now committed to the next generation, but your involvement in their success continues through indirect means. Your territorial defense activities protect the plants where your offspring will develop. Your predation pressure on competing species reduces threats to developing larvae. Your continued survival increases the chances that your genes will have multiple opportunities for expression. The emotional satisfaction of successful reproduction creates behavioral changes that surprised you with their intensity. The aggressive territoriality that once focused on immediate resource acquisition now extends to protecting potential nursery areas. Your hunting patterns shift toward eliminating threats to developing eggs rather than simply securing personal nutrition. Your entire behavioral repertoire reorganizes around supporting reproductive success. But reproduction also extracts physical costs that become apparent over the following weeks. The energy invested in mating activities depletes reserves that took months to accumulate. The stress of prolonged vulnerability during copulation affects your immune system and healing capabilities. The behavioral changes required for successful reproduction sometimes conflict with survival instincts developed during your solitary phases. Recovery from reproductive activities requires careful resource management and risk assessment. You must rebuild energy reserves while avoiding the elevated predation risks that come with increased foraging activity. You need to maintain territorial control without overextending your defensive capabilities. The balance between reproductive investment and personal survival becomes a daily calculation. Your partner faces even greater challenges as she completes the egg-laying process. Her energy reserves are more severely depleted by egg production and placement activities. Her mobility is reduced by the physical changes required for reproduction. Her vulnerability to predation increases during the extended periods of immobility required for careful egg placement. You provide what support you can, but the fundamental burden of reproduction falls more heavily on females than males in your species. This biological reality creates different survival pressures and behavioral adaptations for each sex. Your role shifts toward maximizing the number of successful mating opportunities, while she focuses on optimizing the survival chances of each batch of offspring. The eggs you helped create will face the same challenges you survived during your own larval development. They'll hatch into a world filled with predators, competitors, and environmental hazards that will test every aspect of their inherited survival programming. Most will not survive to adulthood, but those that do will carry forward the genetic combinations that proved most effective under contemporary conditions. Your contribution to this ongoing evolutionary experiment is now embedded in dozens of developing embryos scattered across the garden. Each egg contains a unique combination of genetic instructions that might prove crucial for survival under future environmental conditions. The traits that helped you reach reproductive maturity become part of the species' toolkit for addressing challenges that haven't emerged yet. The seasonal progression continues its relentless march toward winter, and your body begins responding to shortened daylight and cooling temperatures. The behavioral changes required for winter survival start asserting themselves despite your attempts to maintain summer activity patterns. Hunting efficiency decreases as metabolic processes slow in preparation for dormancy. You begin searching for suitable hibernation sites, though your experience with artificial environments has expanded your options beyond traditional natural shelters. The greenhouse complex offers temperature-controlled spaces that might provide winter refuge. Building foundations create microclimates that could support extended dormancy periods. Human structures provide protection from weather extremes that natural shelters cannot match. But artificial hibernation sites also present risks that natural selection never prepared your species to handle. Heating system failures could create deadly temperature fluctuations. Human activity might disturb critical dormancy periods. Chemical treatments could introduce toxins that accumulate during the vulnerable hibernation state. The benefits of artificial shelter come with novel uncertainties. You eventually choose a traditional hibernation site beneath loose bark on a mature oak tree. The location provides the environmental stability your body expects during dormancy while avoiding the unpredictable risks associated with human modified spaces. Your decision represents a compromise between innovation and evolutionary wisdom that reflects the ongoing tension between adaptation and conservation. The transition to dormancy begins gradually as your metabolic processes slow and consciousness fades. Your final active thoughts focus on the eggs developing throughout the garden that carry your genetic legacy forward. You've contributed to the ongoing story of your species' survival, and now that story must continue without your direct participation. Winter's approach signals not just the end of your active season, but the beginning of the next chapter in the endless cycle of ladybug survival and adaptation. Somewhere in the garden, your offspring are developing within protective shells that will shelter them through the cold months ahead. They'll emerge into a world shaped by your generation's successes and failures, carrying forward the accumulated wisdom of countless ancestors while facing challenges that require fresh solutions. Your individual story approaches its conclusion, but the larger narrative of which you were a part continues writing itself through every successful reproduction, every survival challenge overcome, and every adaptation that proves its worth under selective pressure. Life as a ladybug might be brief, but there's another animal out there that has it way worse. Trust me, it's wild. Check out the video and see for yourself. Your hibernation site beneath the oak bark becomes a tomb of sorts, but not the kind you'd expect. The temperature drops faster than usual this year, and your body struggles to adjust its internal chemistry quickly enough. Ice crystals form in your hemolymph, the insect equivalent of blood, and they tear through cellular structures that took months to build. Your organs shut down one by one, but consciousness fades before pain can register. When spring arrives, you don't wake up. Your body remains curled in its final resting position, wings folded, legs drawn tight against your abdomen. You've become part of the bark now, slowly decomposing into the very tree that was supposed to protect you. Other ladybugs emerge from better shelters nearby, but you're not among them. Your second winter proved to be your last. But death in the insect world isn't the end of influence. Your decomposing body enriches the soil around the oak's roots, feeding the tree that will host future generations of ladybugs. The calcium from your exoskeleton becomes part of new bark formation. The proteins from your muscles nourish fungal networks that connect trees throughout the forest. Even in death, you're still part of the ecosystem that shaped your life. Your genetic legacy tells a different story. Across the garden, dozens of eggs containing your DNA survived the winter in better conditions than you did. They remained dormant through the cold months, their development suspended but not stopped. The embryonic ladybugs inside continued their cellular organization at a pace so slow it was nearly imperceptible, but they were still alive, still growing. The first warm days of spring trigger massive biological changes within these tiny shells. Metabolic processes that have been running at minimum levels for months suddenly accelerate. Cell division resumes its normal pace. Organ systems that existed only as primitive clusters begin taking their final forms. The larvae are preparing to enter a world they've never seen but are somehow programmed to understand. Your offspring hatch into a garden that's subtly different from the one you knew. Climate patterns have shifted slightly, bringing warmer temperatures earlier in the season. New plant species have been introduced by human gardening activities. Some of your traditional prey species have declined while others have become more abundant. The fundamental challenges of survival remain the same, but the specific tactics required for success have evolved. One larva carrying your genetic signature emerges from its egg with particularly acute chemical sensors inherited from your lineage. It can detect aphid pheromones at greater distances than its siblings, giving it first access to newly established colonies. This seemingly small advantage compounds quickly in the competitive world of larval development. Better nutrition leads to faster growth, which enables more successful molting, which results in a larger, stronger adult. Another offspring inherits your efficient metabolism, but combines it with enhanced cold tolerance from its mother's side. This genetic combination proves invaluable when an unexpected late frost strikes the garden. While other larvae become sluggish and vulnerable, this individual remains active enough to continue hunting. It not only survives the cold snap, but actually benefits from reduced competition as less hardy larvae succumb to the temperature stress. The diversity of survival strategies represented by your offspring reflects the complex genetic mixing that occurred during your mating activities. Each successful pairing created unique combinations of traits that might prove crucial under different environmental conditions. Natural selection will test these combinations ruthlessly, preserving those that work while eliminating those that don't. Some of your descendants face challenges you never encountered. Urban development has brought new predator species into the garden ecosystem. House cats now patrol areas that were once safe for ground-level activities. Artificial lighting disrupts normal behavioral patterns that evolved under natural day-night cycles. Chemical pollution from nearby roads affects plant health and aphid nutritional quality. But adaptation is what your species does best. Within a single generation, behavioral modifications begin appearing in response to these novel challenges. Larvae learn to avoid areas with high predator activity during vulnerable molting periods. Adults adjust their flight patterns to navigate around artificial light sources that interfere with natural navigation cues. Hunting strategies evolve to exploit new prey species that colonize disturbed habitats. Your genetic contributions must become part of this ongoing evolutionary experiment. The traits that helped you survive multiple seasons provide options for addressing contemporary challenges. Your efficient hunting techniques, refined through trial and error, become instinctive behaviors for larvae that never knew struggle was involved in developing them. Your successful mating strategies influence reproductive behaviors that will shape the next generation's genetic diversity. The predator-prey relationships that structured your existence continue evolving as well. Aphid populations develop new defensive chemicals in response to increased ladybug predation pressure. Ant species refine their livestock protection techniques. Bird hunting strategies adapt to more effectively capture ladybugs that have become more abundant due to successful reproduction. Each change creates ripple effects throughout the entire ecosystem. Your descendants must navigate these shifting relationships while maintaining their essential ecological role. They inherit your basic predatory instincts, but must modify techniques to address new defensive behaviors in their prey. They carry forward your predator avoidance reflexes while developing responses to threats that didn't exist during your lifetime. The garden where you lived and died continues hosting this evolutionary drama, but it's just one theater in a much larger production. Similar interactions play out in ecosystems worldwide, each contributing to the global evolution of ladybug survival strategies. Migration patterns and wind dispersal connect these distant populations, ensuring that successful adaptations discovered in one location can eventually spread to others. Your individual contribution to this vast process was necessarily brief, but every successful survival and reproduction event adds to the cumulative knowledge encoded in your species' DNA. The hunting techniques you refined through painful experience become genetic instructions that guide future behavior. The environmental challenges you overcame provide templates for addressing similar situations. Even your ultimate failure to survive a second winter contributes valuable information about the limits of current adaptive strategies. The larvae emerging from your eggs don't consciously access this inherited wisdom, but it influences their behavior at every critical decision point. When to hunt, how to molt, where to seek shelter, how to avoid predators. All these choices are guided by genetic programming that includes your successful experiences along with those of countless other ancestors. Some of your offspring will face environmental conditions similar to those you survived, applying refined versions of your strategies to familiar challenges. Others will encounter entirely new situations, using tools derived from your experiences to solve problems you never imagined. Both outcomes contribute to the species' ongoing adaptation to a constantly changing world. The physical structures that made you an effective predator, mandible shape, wing design, chemical sensor sensitivity, become part of the inherited blueprint that defines what it means to be a ladybug in your lineage. Your body's solutions and to the problems of flight, as hunting, and reproduction contribute to the developmental template that guides growth in every new generation. Your behavioral innovations also become part of this genetic legacy. The hunting patterns you developed through experimentation, the territorial strategies you employed successfully, the mating preferences that guided your reproductive choices, all these learned behaviors have genetic components that can be passed to offspring. Your experiences literally reshape the evolutionary trajectory of your descendants. The seasonal rhythms that governed your adult life continue influencing your offspring, but they're experiencing these cycles under different environmental conditions. Climate change has altered the timing of plant growth, insect emergence, and weather patterns that ladybug life cycles must synchronize with to survive. Your descendants inherit your basic seasonal responses, but must fine-tune them to match contemporary conditions. This ongoing calibration between inherited instincts and environmental reality creates selection pressure that drives continued evolution. The individuals whose genetic programming most closely matches current conditions will be most successful at surviving and reproducing. Their enhanced success will make their particular genetic combinations more common in future generations. Your winter death removes your direct influence from this process, but your genetic contributions continue participating through your offspring. The traits that proved successful during your lifetime get tested under new conditions. The adaptations that enabled your survival become tools for addressing challenges that didn't exist when you developed them. The garden ecosystem continues its own evolution around these changing ladybug populations. Plants develop new chemical defenses in response to altered herbivore pressures. Prey species adapt their life cycles to avoid peak predator activity. Competing predators adjust their hunting strategies to account for increased ladybug efficiency. The entire web of relationships shifts in response to changes in individual species. Your descendants become part of this dynamic system, both influencing and being influenced by the other species they interact with. They carry forward your successful adaptations while developing new responses to contemporary challenges. Each generation builds on the accumulated wisdom of previous ones while facing novel problems that require fresh solutions. The greenhouse environment where you spent part of your adult life continues attracting ladybugs, including some of your descendants. They bring the adaptations you developed for exploiting artificial environments, but they also face new challenges as human management practices evolve. Chemical treatments change, plant varieties are replaced, and structural modifications alter the controlled environment in unpredictable ways. Your offspring must adapt these inherited strategies to address changing conditions within the greenhouse. The behavioral flexibility you developed through trial and error becomes a genetic predisposition toward environmental plasticity. Your descendants inherit not just specific techniques, but also the capacity to develop new approaches when circumstances require them. The urban expansion that slowly transforms the landscape around the garden creates new opportunities and threats for your lineage. Some descendants adapt to life among ornamental plantings that follow different seasonal patterns than wild vegetation. Others learn to exploit the boom-bust cycles of pest populations that occur in managed landscapes. Each adaptive response adds to the species' toolkit for surviving in human-modified environments. These urban adapted populations develop subtle behavioral and physiological differences from their garden-dwelling relatives. Their flight patterns adjust to navigate around buildings and vehicles. Their chemical sensitivity adapts to filter out pollution while maintaining detection capabilities for natural signals. Their reproductive timing shifts to match the altered seasonal cycles of cultivated plants. Meanwhile, descendants that disperse into wilder areas face more traditional challenges, but under changing environmental conditions. Climate shifts alter the distribution of suitable habitats. Invasive species introduce novel competitive relationships. Natural disasters create temporary opportunities for rapid population expansion, followed by crash periods that test survival adaptations. All these diverging populations remain connected through gene flow that prevents any single group from becoming too specialized for local conditions. Your genetic contributions spread through this network, being tested under multiple environmental scenarios. The adaptations that prove broadly useful become more common throughout the species, while those suited only to specific conditions remain as specialized tools. This process operates on timescales far beyond individual lifespans, but its effects accumulate generation by generation. The ladybugs living in the garden 50 years from now will carry refined versions of the traits that enabled your survival. They'll face challenges you never encountered, using tools derived from your experiences and those of countless other successful individuals. Your story has ended, but it continues to influence every new chapter written by your descendants. The garden where you lived your entire life may eventually disappear, replaced by development or natural succession, but the adaptations developed there will persist in the genetic memory of your lineage. The environmental lessons learned in that specific habitat will prove useful in similar locations worldwide. Human observers occasionally notice ladybugs and appreciate their pest control services, unaware of the complex evolutionary history behind each hunting success. They see simple predation and don't recognize the millions of years of refinement that shaped every aspect of the interaction. They benefit from ecosystem services provided by evolutionary processes they don't understand. But ladybugs don't need human understanding to continue their ancient work. They carry forward the accumulated wisdom of their species through biological programming that operates below conscious awareness. Your contribution to that programming is now complete, integrated into the ongoing narrative of survival and adaptation that defines life itself. The sun rises on another day in the ever-changing garden, illuminating flowers that didn't exist during your lifetime and shining on larvae that carry your genetic signature. They hunt with instincts shaped by your DNA, avoid predators using reflexes you helped refine, and develop according to schedules influenced by your successful growth patterns. They don't know your story, but they live variations of it every day. The fundamental challenges remain constant, even as specific conditions continue evolving. Food must be found, predators must be avoided, mates must be located, and offspring must be produced. The methods change gradually over time, but the underlying imperatives remain eternal. Your contribution to this endless process is complete, woven into the vast biological database that guides species survival. Individual stories may be brief, but they become part of something much larger, an ongoing experiment in adaptation that has been running for millions of years and shows no signs of reaching conclusion. Life as a ladybug continues its relentless cycle, each generation building on the successes and failures of those that came before. Your genetic legacy participates in this process through every successful hunt, every completed metamorphosis, every mating flight, and every egg deposited on a carefully chosen leaf. The story goes on, one day at a time, writing itself toward futures that no individual can imagine, but that the species as a whole will be prepared to face. The microscopic world inside your developing eggs is a marvel of biological engineering that operates without your knowledge or participation. Each embryo follows genetic instructions written over millions of years, instructions that include your own successful survival strategies mixed with those of your mate. Cell division proceeds with mechanical precision, creating the basic body plan that will determine whether these tiny organisms can survive the challenges waiting for them. Temperature fluctuations outside the eggshells create stress that tests the resilience of developing embryos. Some prove more robust than others, their cellular processes continuing despite environmental pressures that would kill less hardy individuals. The variation in stress tolerance reflects genetic diversity inherited from multiple generations of survivors, including adaptations you developed during your own struggle to reach adulthood. Chemical signals from the surrounding plant tissue penetrate the eggshells, providing information about external conditions to the developing larvae. High concentrations of defensive compounds indicate the plant is under stress, possibly from disease or pest pressure. Low nutrient levels suggest the chosen oviposition site may not provide adequate food for newly hatched larvae. These chemical messages help calibrate development timing to match environmental conditions. Your offspring's sensory organs begin functioning before hatching, allowing them to detect vibrations, chemical gradients, and temperature changes that will guide their early behavior. The antennae that will help them locate prey are already sensitive to aphid pheromones. The mandibles that will tear through soft exoskeletons are hardening into efficient cutting tools. The legs that will carry them across vast leaf surfaces are developing the grip strength necessary for climbing vertical plant stems. Inside each egg, the transformation from simple cellular cluster to functional predator follows patterns established by countless previous generations. Wing buds form and remain dormant, waiting for the proper developmental signals to trigger their expansion. Digestive systems organize themselves around the anticipated diet of soft-bodied insects. Nervous systems wire themselves according to behavioral programs that include your own successful hunting strategies. The first larvae to complete development and break free from their shells gain crucial advantages in the competitive environment they're entering. Early hatching provides access to newly established aphid colonies before other predators arrive. Larger body size at emergence translates to more efficient hunting and faster growth rates. Enhanced chemical sensitivity allows detection of prey at greater distances than less well-developed competitors. But early emergence also carries risks that balance these advantages. Unseasonable weather can catch advanced larvae unprepared, their accelerated development having outpaced environmental conditions. Predators may be more active than expected, creating danger for larvae that emerge before protective cover is adequate. Resource availability might not match developmental timing, leading to starvation despite successful hatching. Your genetic contributions help determine how each offspring balances these trade-offs between early development and environmental synchronization. Some inherit your tendency toward rapid growth and aggressive hunting, making them early emergers who capitalize on temporary advantages. Others receive more conservative developmental programming that delays emergence until conditions are more stable and predictable. The diversity of strategies represented by your offspring provides insurance against environmental uncertainty. If conditions favor early emergence, some of your descendants will be positioned to exploit the opportunity. If late-season challenges make conservative development more successful, other offspring will survive to reproduce. This genetic hedge betting reflects millions of years of evolution in unpredictable environments. Newly hatched larvae face immediate decisions that will determine their survival prospects. The first choice involves whether to consume their own eggshells, a behavior that provides essential nutrients, but also delays the search for external food sources. Your descendants inherit decision-making algorithms that weigh nutritional benefits against opportunity costs, choosing optimal strategies based on inherited assessment criteria. The second critical decision involves movement patterns immediately after hatching. Some larvae remain near their birth sites, competing intensively with siblings for limited local resources. Others disperse quickly to reduce competition, accepting the risks of traveling across exposed surfaces to reach new hunting grounds. Your genetic influence shapes these behavioral preferences, favoring strategies that proved successful during your own larval development. Sibling competition begins immediately as larvae encounter each other during their initial exploration of the leaf surface. Size differences that seemed negligible within eggshells become magnified in direct confrontations over food resources. Larger individuals dominate prime feeding locations, while smaller ones are forced to accept marginal hunting territories or face direct predation from their own siblings. Your offspring inherit competitive behaviors, refined through generations of sibling rivalry. Aggressive posturing, resource guarding, and strategic retreat all follow genetic programs that encode successful tactics developed by previous generations. The larvae don't consciously understand these behaviors, but they execute them with instinctive precision that reflects accumulated evolutionary wisdom. Cannibalism among siblings serves multiple biological functions that extend beyond simple nutrition. Eliminating weaker competitors reduces resource pressure on survivors while providing high-quality protein for continued growth. The behavior also functions as a quality control mechanism, ensuring that only the most robust individuals survive to contribute genes to future generations. Your descendants participate in this harsh selection process according to inherited behavioral programs. The plant surfaces where your eggs were deposited present complex three-dimensional hunting environments that challenge newly hatched larvae in ways their parents never experienced. Leaf textures create microscopic landscapes that affect movement patterns and prey detection. Surface chemicals from the plant interact with larval sensory systems in ways that can either enhance or interfere with hunting effectiveness. Wind patterns around leaves create air currents that carry both opportunity and danger. Your offspring must learn to navigate these environments using sensory capabilities that are still developing and behavioral programs that are largely untested. Their success depends on how well inherited instincts match actual conditions and how quickly they can adapt when reality doesn't conform to genetic expectations. The flexibility to modify behaviors based on experience becomes crucial for survival in variable environments. Aphid colonies present hunting opportunities that require sophisticated tactical approaches despite the apparent simplicity of the prey. Large colonies offer abundant food, but also attract competing predators and defensive ant species. Small colonies provide less competition, but may not contain enough prey to sustain larval growth through critical molting periods. Isolated individual aphids are easy to capture, but require extensive searching that exposes larvae to predation risks. Your descendants inherit strategic thinking capabilities that help them assess these trade-offs and choose optimal hunting approaches. The decision-making processes operate below conscious awareness, but reflect accumulated learning from countless previous generations. Larvae that make better strategic choices survive and reproduce more successfully, passing enhanced decision-making abilities to their own offspring. Chemical communication between larvae and their prey creates an invisible landscape of information that guides hunting behavior in ways that escape human observation. Aphids release alarm pheromones when attacked, warning nearby colony members and potentially attracting defensive ants. Larvae must balance the benefits of quick kills against the risks of triggering widespread defensive responses that could eliminate entire hunting territories. Your genetic contributions include refinements to chemical sensitivity and response patterns that help offspring navigate these invisible information networks. Enhanced ability to detect anti-approach pheromones provides early warning of defensive responses. Improved discrimination between alarm signals allows larvae to assess threat levels and adjust hunting strategies accordingly. These capabilities give your descendants competitive advantages in complex chemical environments. The molting process that punctuated your own larval development continues to present critical vulnerability periods for your offspring. Each molt requires larvae to shed their protective exoskeletons and rebuild them in larger sizes, creating windows of extreme vulnerability that last several hours. Timing these vulnerable periods to minimize predation risks while maximizing growth benefits requires precise environmental assessment and behavioral flexibility. Your descendants inherit molting behaviors that reflect successful strategies developed by previous generations. Site selection for molting follows genetic programs that evaluate shelter quality, escape route availability, and predator presence. Timing decisions balance internal developmental pressures against external environmental conditions. Recovery behaviors after molting prioritize rapid exoskeleton hardening while maintaining alertness for approaching threats. Predator encounters during larval development test inherited defensive capabilities against constantly evolving threats. Spider webs present passive dangers that require visual detection and avoidance behaviors. Active hunting spiders demand different defensive responses based on escape speed and concealment strategies. Parasitic wasps create threats that operate on entirely different timescales, requiring behavioral modifications that extend across multiple days or weeks. Your offspring face these challenges using defensive toolkits inherited from successful ancestors. Flight responses follow genetic programs that optimize escape trajectories based on predator approach angles and terrain features. Freezing behaviors minimize detection risks when escape isn't possible. Chemical defenses provide last resort protection when other strategies fail. The effectiveness of these inherited responses determines which individuals survive to contribute genes to future generations. Weather patterns create environmental pressures that test physiological adaptations inherited from multiple generations of survivors. Temperature fluctuations affect metabolic rates and activity levels in ways that can either enhance or impair hunting effectiveness. Humidity changes alter chemical signal transmission and prey behavior patterns. Precipitation events create both opportunities and dangers that require flexible behavioral responses. Your genetic legacy includes physiological adaptations that help offspring cope with weather variability. Enhanced temperature tolerance allows continued activity during conditions that incapacitate less hardy individuals. Improved humidity sensing enables behavioral adjustments that maintain optimal chemical communication. Water resistance capabilities protect against precipitation damage while maintaining mobility during weather events. The transition from larval to adult form represents the most dramatic biological transformation your offspring will experience, involving complete reorganization of body structures and behavioral programs. The pupation process requires larvae to find secure locations where they can remain immobile for extended periods while their bodies dissolve and rebuild according to genetic instructions that include your successful adult characteristics. Site selection for pupation follows inherited criteria that balance protection needs against emergence requirements. Locations must provide shelter from predators and weather while allowing newly emerged adults to escape and disperse effectively. Your descendants inherit assessment capabilities that evaluate potential pupation sites according to criteria refined through millions of years of evolution. The metamorphosis itself operates according to genetic programs that coordinate the destruction of larval structures with the construction of adult organs. Wing development follows patterns inherited from successful flyers like yourself. Reproductive organ formation incorporates genetic information from both parents. Sensory system reorganization creates adult capabilities that reflect ancestral adaptations to aerial hunting and mate location. Emergence from pupation presents immediate challenges that test newly formed adult capabilities against environmental realities. Wing expansion and hardening must occur within narrow time windows to prevent permanent damage. Chemical sensor calibration requires exposure to environmental signals that activate genetic programs. Flight muscle activation follows inherited sequences that prepare new adults for immediate mobility needs. Your offspring emerge into adult life, carrying physical and behavioral characteristics inherited from your successful survival and reproduction. Their wing structures reflect aerodynamic refinements developed through generations of flight evolution. Their hunting instincts incorporate tactical innovations that proved effective in competitive environments. Their mating preferences include selection criteria that favor genetically compatible partners. The adult world they enter continues evolving in response to selection pressures that operate across multiple species and environmental gradients. New predator species colonize habitats previously safe for ladybug activities. Climate change alters seasonal timing relationships that affect reproductive success. Human activities modify landscapes in ways that create novel opportunities and challenges for adapted populations. Your genetic contributions become part of the ongoing evolutionary experiment that tests adaptive strategies against constantly changing conditions. The traits that enabled your survival provide options for addressing contemporary challenges. The behavioral flexibility you developed through experience becomes inherited capability for environmental adaptation. Your reproductive success ensures that successful genetic combinations continue participating in future evolutionary processes. The garden ecosystem, where your story unfolded, continues hosting similar dramas as each new generation faces the eternal challenges of survival and reproduction. Individual stories may be brief, but they contribute to something much larger, an ongoing biological experiment that has been running for millions of years and shows no signs of reaching conclusion. Your descendants carry forward the accumulated wisdom of countless ancestors while facing challenges that require fresh solutions. They inherit tools developed through previous experiences while developing new capabilities for contemporary problems. The process continues, generation after generation, writing itself toward futures that no individual can predict, but that the species as a whole will be prepared to meet. Life as a ladybug might be rough, but there's another animal out there that has it way worse. Trust me, it's wild. Check out the video and see for yourself. The cycle doesn't pause for sentiment or reflection. While your body feeds nutrients back into the soil that supported your entire existence, the eggs you helped create are already stirring with new life. Spring warmth subpenetrates their protective shells, triggering developmental processes that have been waiting through months of winter dormancy. Inside each microscopic capsule, cellular machinery kicks into high gear, building the next generation from genetic blueprints that include your successful survival strategies. Your offspring emerge into a world that's subtly different from the one you knew. The plants have grown taller, new species have colonized empty spaces, and the entire ecosystem has shifted in response to changing conditions. But the fundamental challenges remain unchanged. Find food, avoid death, grow strong enough to reproduce. These newly hatched larvae carry your genetic instructions for meeting these challenges, though they'll have to prove themselves all over again. The first larva to break free from its shell doesn't waste time on ceremony. It immediately begins consuming the eggshell that protected its development, extracting every possible nutrient before venturing onto the leaf surface. This behavior follows programming inherited from countless generations, including refinements you contributed through your own successful larval development. Every action is purposeful, every decision weighted toward survival. And that's the complete story of your life as a ladybug. From that first moment when you pushed through your eggshell to your final winter beneath the oak bark, you lived through every stage of one of nature's most remarkable transformations. You survived the brutal competition of larval life, mastered the art of flight, found mates, and passed your genes forward to the next generation. Your individual journey may have ended, but your genetic legacy continues in every larva that hatches, every hunt that succeeds, and every adaptation that helps your species thrive in an ever-changing world. Here you can find the next video. Until then, see you soon.